My name is Andrew, and I'll be your guide tonight. Welcome to Sleepy School, a place where you can drift off while learning something new. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? It's one of my favorite things, to hear where people are relaxing and falling asleep. If you enjoy tonight's story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to keep up with more sleep lectures and stories. It helps us share these journeys with even more dreamers. Now, settle in, close your eyes, and let's begin tonight's sleep story. Tonight, we're going to wander into the world of numbers, not the kind you balance in your checkbook, or the ones you see glowing on your phone screen, but numbers so vast, so unimaginable, that they drift almost into the realm of dreams. Our story begins with a word, a funny little word, one you already know from the modern world of search engines. That word is Google. But before it was a tech company's playful spelling, it was a mathematical idea. A Googol is the number 1, followed by 100 zeros. That's it. Simple to write, but impossible to truly picture. The name itself was coined not by a famous mathematician, not by a university scholar, but by a child. In the year 1938, an American mathematician named Edward Kastner was trying to explain very large numbers to the public. He wanted a term, something that would stick in the imagination. So, he turned to his 9-year-old nephew, Milton Sirota. He asked the boy, "What should we call this giant number? A 1 with 100 zeros?" And the child, without hesitation, said Google. The simplicity of it, the playfulness, was perfect. Kastner loved it, and the name stuck. Later, Milton also suggested an even bigger number, a 1 with a Google zeros. That one was called a Googolplex. Even saying the word feels like a tumble into infinity. And so, thanks to a 9-year-old with a vivid imagination, mathematics gained a word that could carry the weight of unimaginable size. But what does a Google really mean? A 1 with 100 zeros? It looks something like this: 100 trillion. Just writing it out feels dizzying. And even that doesn't quite capture it. Our minds aren't built to grasp such enormity all at once. So, we start by comparing. Let's begin small, with something you can picture. Take the number of grains of sand on all the beaches and deserts of Earth. Scientists estimate it to be about 7 quintillion, 500 quadrillion. That's a 7 with 18 zeros. A huge number. But compared to a Google, it's nothing. A Google is so much larger that the sands of Earth wouldn't even begin to fill the space. Now imagine stars. Astronomers tell us there are perhaps 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Put them all together, you get maybe 1 septillion stars. That's a 1 with 24 zeros. Far more than grains of sand. Yet still, not even close to a Google. At this point, the mind begins to wobble. Sand, stars. These are things we think of as countless. But next to a Google, they shrink to nothing more than a whisper. And so, when Kastner and young Milton chose the name, it wasn't to give us a number we could ever actually use in practical life. It was to remind us of the vastness of the mathematical universe, a is playful, almost silly, and yet it teaches us about the limits of imagination. Think about writing it down. A Googol has 100 zeros. It would take up nearly an entire page just to write. Now think about writing a Googolplex, one with a Googol zeros. You couldn't possibly finish. There isn't enough ink, or paper, or even atoms in the observable universe to write all the zeros out. So already, here we are, stretching against the limits of what's possible, and we're only at the beginning of the story. The history of naming big numbers goes back much further than 1938. In fact, ancient civilizations also struggled with naming large amounts. The Greeks used the word myriad, which meant 10,000, and sometimes multiplied it to mean countless. In India, mathematicians created names for numbers up to powers of 10, far larger than anything in Greece or Rome. In the Vedic texts, you find words for tens of millions, billions, even numbers with 53 zeros. The human imagination has always reached, always stretched toward infinity. And yet, it took a child in the 20th century to give us one of the simplest and most enduring names for a number beyond comprehension. Now, pause for a moment, close your eyes, and imagine you're holding a single smooth pebble in your hand. It has a clear, solid weight. You can picture it easily. Now imagine two pebbles. Easy still. Now a handful. 10, 20, maybe 50. You can still picture that. Now imagine 1,000. Your mind begins to shift. 1,000,000. Already it grows hazy. 1,000,000,000. Now the pebble has slipped entirely into abstraction. A Googol is 1,000,000,000 raised far, far beyond the reach of comprehension. And yet, we name it. We carry it. We let it drift through the corridors of imagination, like a star too distant to see, but still glowing in thought. That is what a Googol truly is. Not a number for accounting or shopping lists, but a symbol of the human need to wonder, to stretch beyond what's measurable, to dream with mathematics. And tonight, as we move through the story of the Googol, we'll let those dreams drift with us. We'll imagine numbers larger than the stars, larger than atoms, larger even than time itself. And in that space between imagination and infinity, we'll find rest. If a Googol already feels too big to imagine, let's take the next step. Instead of sand or stars, let's think about atoms. Atoms are the building blocks of everything you see. The chair beneath you, the air you breathe, even the blood moving through your veins. They are so small that in a single grain of sand, there are more atoms than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth. Scientists estimate that the observable universe contains around 10 to the power of 80 atoms. That's a 1 with 80 zeros, a breathtakingly large number. And yet, still, far smaller than a Googol. Remember, a Googol is a 1 with 100 zeros, or written another way, 10 to the power of 100. That means it's 10,000 times larger than the number of atoms in the entire observable universe. Try to hold that thought, and you'll feel the mind slipping into dream territory. That's the beauty of it. Now, let's try another comparison. Think about time itself. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. That's roughly 4.3 times 10 to the power of of 17 seconds since the Big Bang, a vast expanse of time. But even if you counted every second from the very first moment of creation until now, you wouldn't reach anywhere near a Google. So here we are again. Sand, stars, atoms, time itself, each one feeling infinite in its own way, and yet dwarfed by a single word dreamed up by a 9-year-old child. Mathematicians often use the Googol to teach humility in the face of infinity. Because the truth is, a Googol, while enormous, is still finite. It still has a top and a bottom. It still ends. Infinity never does. It's easy to confuse the two, to think of a Googol as infinite. But mathematicians draw a sharp line. Infinity isn't a number you can write down. It's a concept. It's the idea of endlessness. No matter how high you climb, infinity stretches higher still. Even if you could somehow count to a Googol, infinity would still be waiting beyond. And that's one of the lessons Edward Kastner wanted to share. When he gave the world the Googol, he wanted people to see the difference between big and endless, to feel in their bones that there's always more. Kastner even used the Googol to make a point about science and philosophy. In his book, Mathematics and the Imagination, he explained that although the universe is unimaginably large, it is still finite. Numbers like the Googol help us feel that boundary, while infinity itself reminds us of the horizon beyond. Let's pause here. Imagine yourself lying in a quiet meadow under a midnight sky. Above you, the stars stretch in every direction. You try to count them. 1, 2, 3. But soon you give up. There are too many. It feels endless. And yet, somewhere out there, the stars end. The night sky gives way to the edge of the observable universe. That difference between endless feeling and actual end is the difference between infinity and the Googol. Now let's play with another idea. What if you tried to write down a Googol? You'd need a pen and paper, a lot of paper. In fact, if you wrote 1 0 every second, it would take you over 3 years just to write them all. And when you finally finished, you'd have covered notebooks and scrolls with rows and rows of zeros. And yet, when mathematicians write 10 to the power of 100, it fits neatly in a few strokes. A mountain of meaning tucked into a tiny symbol. And the Googolplex, that's a 1 with a Googol zeros. Or written more compactly, 10 to the power of a Googol. Even the thought of writing it down collapses under its own weight. You couldn't do it, because there are not enough particles in the universe to hold all the zeros. If you tried to print it out, even if every atom in the universe were used as ink, you would run out long before finishing. So the Googolplex isn't really about writing or even counting. It's about imagining the impossible and realizing that the impossible still has structure. It's the dream of a child given mathematical form. And as your eyelids grow heavy, as you let these thoughts wash over you like waves, you may notice something gentle in the pattern. Each comparison we make, sand, stars, atoms, time, slips into the same truth, that the human mind, though small in the vastness of the cosmos, is capable of reaching outward, of naming, of holding ideas larger than itself. That is what makes a Googol so beautiful. It isn't just a number, it's a reminder that we, tiny as we are, can think big, so big, it feels like dreaming. Let's wander further into the land where numbers dance with possibility. Think first of a simple deck of cards, 52 cards. Shuffle them, and you create an arrangement that has probably never existed before in all of history. Why? Because the number of possible shuffles is about 8 times 10 to the power of 67. That's an 8 followed by 67 zeros, a number so large that if every person who ever lived shuffled one deck per second for the age of the universe, we would still not come close to exhausting them all. And yet, compared to a Googol, even this staggering number is small. Now picture a game of chess. 2 players, a board of 64 squares, 16 pieces each, moving in carefully chosen ways. The number of possible games of chess has been estimated to be around 10 to the power of 120. That's bigger than a Googol. So big, in fact, that some mathematicians call it the Shannon number, after Claude Shannon, the father of information theory. It reminds us that even simple rules can blossom into a forest of possibilities. But here's where it gets soothing again. You don't need to hold 10 to the power of 120 in your mind. It's enough simply to feel the shape of it, to know that within the little black and white squares of a chessboard lies a universe of games, stretching far beyond a Googol. It's humbling and strangely calming. Now let's leave games behind and drift toward life itself. Your body, every cell, carries within it a code, DNA, 4 tiny letters, A, T, C, and G. They combine in different sequences to write the story of you. If you took a stretch of DNA just 100 letters long, the number of possible combinations would be 4 to the power of 100. That's about 10 to the power of 60. Already enormous. But the human genome isn't 100 letters. It's over 3 billion. The number of possible sequences is so large, it makes a Googol feel almost modest. And yet, here you are. One specific arrangement, one singular story. Among all the possibilities, the universe wrote you. That thought alone can feel like a lullaby. Now let's wander into the kitchen, a simple bowl of rice. Imagine counting grains of rice, one by one. If you had 10 to the power of 12 grains, that's 1 trillion grains of rice. You could feed the entire planet for a meal. But still, 1 trillion is nothing compared to a Googol. If you had a Googol grains of rice, you could fill the universe many times over, not just galaxies, but every empty space between them. The rice would overflow beyond imagination, and still, the number would end. That is what separates the Googol from infinity. Let's pause and step gently into another comparison. The speed of light. Light travels about 186,000 miles per second. In 1 year, it covers about 6 trillion miles. In the age of the universe, 13.8 billion years, light has traveled about 10 to the power of 26 meters. That's a 1 with 26 zeros, a number vast enough to span the cosmos, but once again, dwarfed by the Googol. The Googol is like a reminder written in the sky that even when we stretch as far as we can measure, there are bigger numbers waiting beyond. Now, let's drift into something playful. Imagine trying to count to a Googol, one number at a time. 1, 2, 3. Even if you counted one number every second, without ever stopping to sleep or eat, it would take longer than the life of the universe. In fact, it would take longer than trillions upon trillions of lifetimes. So, the Googol isn't something you ever reach by counting. It's something you hold in your imagination, a place you visit, like a dream. Mathematicians sometimes say that numbers are a kind of landscape. You start small, 1, 2, 3, and the path feels close and familiar. 10, 100, 1,000, and the road stretches further. Then you climb into the mountains, millions, billions, trillions, until the peaks are covered in snow and cloud. And beyond those mountains, past the horizon, sits the Googol, like a castle in the clouds, too far to reach on foot, but visible in the imagination. Now picture this. The word Googol was made up by a child, a 9-year-old boy, and from his playful mind grew one of the most famous large numbers in all of mathematics. That is the magic that a child's imagination and a grown mathematician's curiosity combine to give us a word that carries galaxies of meaning. It shows us that thinking big doesn't require age or authority. Sometimes it only requires wonder. And as you lie here listening, your own mind is doing the same thing, stretching outward, reaching for numbers too big to see, letting them wash over you, not to solve them, not to conquer them, but simply to feel their weight. The Googol is not infinity, but it is vast, and vastness has its own kind of comfort, because in vastness, we realize how small our troubles are, how brief our worries feel. A single night's sleep, a passing cloud, a worry at work. They shrink against the backdrop of 10 to the power of 100. So let the Googol be a blanket tonight. Soft, heavy, endless seeming. It won't smother you. It will hold you. It will remind you that there is more, always more, and that your dreams are part of something immeasurably wide. And as you drift, think of the numbers, flowing like stars, a 1 with 100 zeros, glowing softly, stretching across the sky, each zero a point of light, each pause a space for breath, until at last your mind quiets, and the great number waits for you in silence. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey tonight. We began with a simple question: how big is a Googol? And we found it is more than just a number. It is a story of imagination, of a child giving shape to wonder, of mathematicians measuring scales so vast they stretch past galaxies and atoms alike. Along the way, we peeked into the grains of rice in a bowl, the shuffle of a deck of cards, the endless branching of DNA, and the glimmering distances of starlight. Each example, a reminder that numbers are everywhere, in games, in food, in the cosmos, in life itself, and the Googol sits above them like a crown, not infinity, but close enough to make us feel it. It is humbling and strangely soothing to know such numbers exist, because when we place our small daily worries against the backdrop of a 1 with 100 zeros, they feel lighter. They drift away like dust in the evening light. So as you settle deeper into rest, let the Googol be a gentle horizon, a place too far to reach, but near enough to imagine. Let it hold you tonight, like a blanket just as far. Good night and sleep well. Thank you for joining me tonight here at Sleepy School. I hope you learned something new and found a little peace along the way. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe so you never miss a nightly journey. And I'd still love to know where in the world you're listening from. It always makes me smile to hear the places these stories travel to. Until next time, sleep well, dream deeply, and good night.